Agentic AI in the SOC is delivering real, measurable, quantifiable ROI. Whether it's Profit AI or somebody else doesn't matter, but I think for teams in security and particular teams in security operations, take a look and you'll be amazed as to what it can do.
Hi, and welcome to Somaini's Trust Issues. I'm Justin Somaini. Today I have Kamal Shah, who's the CEO and co-founder of Profit, where they're driving high automation in the SOC intelligence capability by detecting those threats that are coming into your SOC, analyzing them, vetting them, and driving remediation along the ways. In addition, finding issues that you never found before. Of course, leveraging AI, but it's a lot more sophisticated than that. Really hope you enjoy this. Kamal, hey, thanks for making some time for me today.
Thank you for having me, Justin.
So we've known each other for a while, but I don't think I ever really asked about where you grew up and your background a little bit. You know, I think we met Semantic Sky High and that kind of phase of life, but before that, I never really dove in. So I'd love to kind of understand a little bit.
Yeah, no, thank you for asking. Yeah, I grew up in Bombay, which is now Mumbai, India, and immigrated here. So my family immigrated to the United States in late 80s, and we ended up moving to Memphis, Tennessee, of all places, because my wife's parents and extended family, actually not my wife, but my mom's parents and extended family lived in Memphis, Tennessee, and that's what brought us to Memphis.
I would not expect that. You know, Memphis. What brought them to Memphis?
Yeah, so my mom and her siblings all came here to study in the United States from India, and as a classic immigrant story, one of her brothers got a job in Memphis, and then as other siblings graduated, they all moved to Memphis to be closer to the family and got jobs there. And today, Memphis is home. That's where we go for Thanksgiving, and it's great to hang out with a big family. My mom comes from a family of 7 brothers and sisters, and so it's a fun get together every time we get together.
So do you all, is there like a dress up like Elvis? You go to Graceland? There has to be I've never been, but I hear, you know, it's a thing, right?
Yeah, and I'm not an Elvis fan. I am a Beatles fan, growing up, but
Yeah.
Memphis does have one of the best barbecues in the world. And so I'm a big barbecue fan, and I also enjoy blues music. So if you haven't been, I would highly recommend it. You know, go on to Beale Street, and it's a fun weekend for sure.
I didn't know you are a barbecue. I love a barbecue. I go see my folks in Tennessee, you know, once a year, twice a year, and literally it's pretty disgusting because I will eat ribs every day, and it becomes egregious in that. Oh,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was a period where I used to have ribs shipped in from Memphis and cook it over the summer here. And you know, my 2 favorite places are Rendezvous, if you want to eat dry ribs, or Corky's if you like wet ribs. But they're just stunning and equally good as the pulled pork sandwich. So you're making me hungry here at 10 a.m., Justin.
Well, I'm gonna have to catch up with you on that because I mean, seriously, that's amazing. So you know, in Memphis, when did you and where did you start your career? And maybe just kind of walking through a little bit of that.
Yeah, so you know, after graduation, I studied computer science, and then I worked at FedEx and stayed in Memphis to be closer to family. And had a great run at FedEx. I started off as an engineer, software engineer, and then I moved over to the marketing team. And it wasn't your traditional marketing team. What we did is did new products, new services, pricing, forecasting. So it was more on the technical side of marketing, and had a blast working on that team. You know, I was part of a team, and this is where I got my first exposure to product management as we know it today. And FedEx, the product is a service. It's not a SaaS software. And I was part of the team that launched FedEx same day service, that launched FedEx first overnight service, which is the 8:30 a.m. delivery. And it's amazing what goes into launching the service at a large company like FedEx, because every aspect of the company is involved, and you're running a task force with 150 people involved, and everything from ground operations to air operations to billing to customer service to invoicing all gets impacted, right, when you launch a new service. So great experience, and that really formed my love for building new products.
Huh. And so, and then what, because you've been through a couple of startups, walk me through that.
Yeah, so the journey from FedEx to business school and then to tech was, FedEx was a very big user and buyer of technology. And so we got exposure to some of the cutting edge technologies from Silicon Valley back in early 90s. And that's what led me to say, hey, maybe instead of using those products or software, I want to go help build that. And I used business school as a transition to Silicon Valley. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was your first company getting into?
Yeah, so the first company after business school was Trilogy Software. It was in Austin, Texas, and great company, great people, arguably pound for pound. They had the best team, and I stayed there for a year, and then I'd met my current wife now, and she was in finance, and so we were debating whether to move to the East Coast in New York or to the Bay Area, and the Bay Area made a lot more sense for me given what I wanted to do, and that's what brought us to the Bay Area, where I've been living here now, or we've been living here for past 26 years.
Oh, that's awesome. And then what happened? Because you were at Stack Rocks, Sky High, before you ended up at Profit.
Yeah. So, the first, after Trilogy, I joined a company called Acera, which was in one of the early pioneers of SaaS. And they were doing hosting. It wasn't quite SaaS as we know it today. And that company, talk about, bubbles. That company raised money at $1 billion valuation back in the day in late 90s, early 2000. And then,
Wow.
Sold for pennies on the dollar. But then I went to Siebel Systems, which most folks won't know what that is, but that was the precursor to Salesforce.
Yeah.
Stayed there for a while, and that's when I decided to leave Siebel to join Arif and the team at Clearwell Systems. And Arif Halali, who is the CEO of Clearwell, he and I were classmates at business school. And that's how I ended up at Clearwell, and then I've done a string of startups since then.
That's awesome. You're making me feel old because I remember Siebel very, very well. So when did you get, then you went to Sky High and then Stack Rocks, right?
Yeah. So we had a great run at Clearwell. Grew the business to $100 million run rate. And we grew the business in the middle of the worst recession since the Great Depression, right? So in 08 and 09, we're still doubling revenues. And we got acquired by Symantec in 2011. And then I took a year off, and I was a EIR at Sequoia Capital, and interacting with CIOs and CISOs in the community. The problem around visibility and control over data going to the cloud was very top of mind for CISOs and CIOs. And folks are talking about this thing called Dropbox, and people uploading sensitive data to Dropbox and sharing it. And how do we get a handle on it? And I wanted to start something in that space to solve the problem. Couldn't find a technical co-founder. And then I got introduced to Rajiv Gupta, the CEO of Sky High. And that's what led me to Sky High, and had a great run there for 4.5 years, and scaled that business to $100 million run rate. And then I left before they got acquired by McAfee. So
was that a planned egress? So you're like, I'm out of here before I go into McAfee.
No, I wish I could. I was that. I had that foresight, but that wasn't the plan. I was ready to play a broader role, and Raji was very supportive. He's a great friend, great mentor, And so I left to go and either start something or be the CEO of a company and play a broader role in helping grow a company. And that's what led me to StackRox.
Yeah, Rajiv's great. I haven't talked to him in a while. I think it's been about a year. But yeah, that must have been a great experience working with Rajiv.
Oh yeah, and
smart guy.
All the entire team there, Rajiv, Kaushik, Shekhar, the co-founders, just learned a ton. And there's one underlying theme across all the companies. I've been very fortunate to work with incredibly talented folks, and I take no credit for it. It's just pure luck. Even at FedEx, the broader marketing team, if you look at the leadership team today at FedEx, right? Raj, who is one of my colleagues, is now the CEO of FedEx, and a lot of other folks are now in very high roles running big organizations at FedEx. And so been very lucky to be part of great teams and learn from them. So, and then StackRox, which obviously container security in that space. And did we meet at Symantec? I absolutely know it was Sky High. I was at Box at the time. That's for sure. But yeah, anyways, it doesn't matter. Yeah, we did meet before. We met at Symantec, and then we lost touch for a little bit, and then we were obviously reconnected at Sky High. And again, a great problem statement. New trend, a new technology trend around containers and Kubernetes, and the need to secure them. And it was interesting. The product was great, and we were a little bit behind on the go-to-market side, and we were. We grew the business. We had 120 paying customers, and we ended up, being acquired by Red Hat, which is part of IBM. I mean, it's interesting you bring it up, and maybe a little bit relevant to today at Profit, but you had Twistlock, you had a couple of other competitors at that time. Were there any lessons learned in a competitive nature as, startups plus competitives, as you start with like 50 and then they kind of start dwindling down? That's always a fascinating process from the outside to watch, albeit confusing a little bit. Are there any kind of, hey, let me simplify this for you and how this works, or maybe key lessons around that competitive nature that came out of Stack? Yeah, I think, a couple that come to mind. One was we bet early on Kubernetes. So after I joined, we said, look, we can't be all things to all people. If you remember back in 2018, there were multiple orchestrators, right? Docker had an orchestrator, Docker Swarm. There was Mesosphere. There was ACS from Amazon. And it's very hard as a startup to be all things to all people. So we said, hey, look, we got to bet on something. Let's bet on Kubernetes and let's build the best solution for Kube. And then the market also turned in our favor, right? Kubernetes took off, and all the big platform providers started supporting Kubernetes, Microsoft, Amazon, and Google. Kubernetes came from Google, so Google always supported it. But then IBM bought Red Hat. Red Hat supported Kubernetes as well. And then VMware bought Heptio. So there was this massive movement to Kubernetes, and then we were in a great spot. Right? So I think the lesson learned here is, as a startup, focus is important. You can't be all things to all people, particularly when it comes to product. And then two, making the right architectural bet. And nobody knows. And, we had some inkling that Kubernetes was going to be big based on just the adoption from an open source perspective, but we had no idea they would become the de facto standard. And so if you make the right architectural bets and get lucky with those, then you can really scale the business effectively. So going from that to, hey, I want to go back into the ring, so to speak. How did you come to Profit? And what was the thought process of thinking through what problem do we want to solve? I assume there's discussions, there's discovery, there's a whole bunch of different things. Absolutely. And, for me, it was going back to and reflecting on the experiences from Sky High and StackRox. And the number one complaint, Justin, that we used to hear from customers every single day at both those companies is too many alerts, too many false positives. Yeah. Like I vividly remember talking to the CISO of a large telco, and the CISO is using SkyHigh for cloud DLP, data loss prevention. And they had a team of 12 analysts just dealing with false positives from DLP alerts. So the pain point was very first nature to me, and because I heard it every single day over the last two companies. And so when ChatGPT came out in November of 2022, right, and we all have our favorite ChatGPT aha moments. And for me, it was, hey, can we leverage AI and AI agents to automate the process of triaging, investigating, responding to alerts, and taking care of the 90% plus false positives, so that security teams can really focus on the true positives and truly make an impact to the organization. And that was the general idea. And then we went through the process of validating the pain and talking to CISOs and making sure that, current solutions that were being used to solve this decade-old problem were ineffective, and we could truly build a faster, better, cheaper solution leveraging agentic AI.
Interesting. And so how long was that process? And, right after that, what is the tagline, if you will, of Profit?
Yeah. The process was about 6 months. And so we went and spoke to over 100 CISOs and security leaders. So after I left Red Hat, we went through the process of, let's go validate the pain. And it was clear. And let's go validate that existing solutions are not meeting the mark. And specifically, the open question we had is that have SOAR tools, right? Like Phantom, which is not part of Splunk, or Demisto, which is part of Palo Alto Networks, have they adequately solved the problem? Or even, second generation SOAR solutions like Tynes and Torque, have they solved the problem? And, of the 160 plus conversations that we had, there were only 3 CISOs that were happy with their SOAR implementation, right? And we can get into the details as to why. But so a big problem, that's something they wanted to solve. So it's not just the problem exists, but is it a priority for them to solve the problem? Because that matters. And then, can we build a great solution? Do we have unique insights as to what it means to build a great product? And so that was the genesis behind formation of, what's now Profit Security.
For me, after all these years, we have always complained about labor being a problem in the industry. And then I kind of reflect on the preventative, detective, and corrective control sets and really process maturity. When SOARs came out, like Torque and Tynes, specifically, that were more of at that point, a Swiss Army knife of automation capabilities. They're a little bit more focused in the SOC today. I was really excited, but I didn't see a lot of companies adopting a general security program automation effort, for lack of a better word. In other words, how do I delabor the processes as much as possible, regardless whatever the security process is?
Yep.
I think it's really interesting nowadays when we look at, I'll use a general bucket of AI, and of course that includes LMs and similarity algorithms and a whole bunch of other things that make up that. Do you see a lot of companies, in a general sense, outside of the SOC, security teams focusing on that, or are they still, hey, I'm going to be reactionary to this problem? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think there is greater focus on automation today, Justin, than perhaps it was even a year ago, 2 years ago. And I think what's changed is that most security teams, if not all security teams, are being asked to do more with the same. And the only way you can do more with the same is through automation. And then the question is, okay, what does that automation look like? Do I want to go and buy a SOAR product and then have a couple of automation engineers in the security team that take those products and then codify the playbooks and build out the integrations and go through that? Or do we leverage a agentic AI solution such as Profit Security? And there are others in the market for sure that can go and deliver value on day one as opposed to day 90, right? And so that's really the decision that we see companies make in terms of driving automation. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my world of, using SOARs, creating those run books, implementing them. It really needed to be an intentional implementation and process where my impatience with the team always had conflict because I'm like, no, do more, do more, do more. And they're like, calm down. We need to create a run book. We need to test it, etc.
That's right.
That resonates really well. So walk me through Profit. How's Profit solving this challenge?
Yeah. So, what we have built is a agentic AI SOC platform. And simplistically, Justin, you can think of this as a set of AI agents that automate these manual, tedious tasks of triaging, investigating, and responding to alerts or even performing threat hunts. Right. So imagine an AI SOC analyst as your coworker, right? And the moment an alert fires in your environment, right? It could be alert from any security tool. It could be custom detections that you may have written on top of your SIEM, or it could be threat hunts in your environment. And so imagine an alert fires and an agentic AI, SOC analyst picks up the alert. So your dwell time on the alert is 0. Right. So that's not sitting in a queue waiting for it to be triaged for a human to pick it up. Then it goes and based on the alert, it dynamically builds an investigation plan based on what the product's been trained on. Hey, here are the set of 20 to 30 questions that you should ask to decide if this is malicious or benign, if it's a true positive or a false positive. Mm-hmm. And then once it has the plan, it goes and executes the plan. So it emulates what analysts do today. But goes and retrieves data from different data sources in your environment that have been configured, and then retrieves the data, correlates that information, analyzes it, and then says, hey, here's the reason why this is a false positive or a true positive. And then it also gives you complete transparency and explainability into its thought process. So here are the questions that the agentic AI asked. Here are the queries that it wrote to retrieve data from different data sources. Here's the evidence that it gathered, right? And so that it's not a black box, and that really builds trust with security teams, and that it can do remediation. You can have a human in the loop if you want to do, if you want a human to validate before they take remediation actions. And then you can also learn from feedback that analysts provide as well in real time. So that's really what's the power of a agentic AI SOC analyst. And the amazing thing here, Justin, is the average time to conduct an investigation across 1 million plus investigations that we've done so far is 4 minutes. Right? You think about that. And what we hear consistently from customers is that, hey, the alert's typically sitting in a queue for several minutes, and then it takes us 20, 30 minutes. And so the time to go through a thorough investigation is really important. MTTI, mean time to investigate, mean time to respond. And particularly in today's world, where according to CrowdStrike, the breakout speed, right, or breakout time is now 48 minutes. So you have to act, you have to act quickly to make sure that alerts are not sitting in a queue, and the damage is done before your team picks it up.
So sounds amazing. Let's step into it a little bit. You very well know, we've heard of the panacea solutions in the past. First question is this a replacement of my SIEM, or does it sit on top, an add-on? What does that look like from operationally implementation kind of perspective?
Yeah, no, great question. And this is not a SIEM replacement. It complements and sits on top of your existing security tooling and infrastructure that you have. And we designed it purposely because we wanted the time to value to be as short as possible, Justin. And so if you go down a SIEM replacement, that's a 6-month-long cycle, right? By the time.
What if I really ask you to replace my on-premise elastic archaic SIM?
Yeah. And
you're not going to do it.
We said we are not the right partner for that. And, we're happy to point you to other companies that can do that. But I hear you, the pain is there.
Yeah.
But, our focus has been on, you have a SIM, you have security tools in place. There's no shortage of alerts. You're suffering from alert fatigue. You may be leveraging an MSP or MDR, and there's a lot of dissatisfaction with that market too, by the way. And because they're outsourcing level 1, level 2 analysts, work to them. And an agentic AI, SOC analyst it's just a lot more, productive, faster, better, cheaper. And that's really the value proposition that we offer today. And then, we can talk about roadmap and where we're going in the future. But yeah.
So I have existing streams coming in from my enterprise. I would imagine, what does that training process look like? To my environment is 50% unique, 80% unique to others. So you can't really, at least I would imagine, you can't really drop an LLM in my environment and have it work magically. It has to learn about the nuances of what we see, as well as how we respond to different services, different business units, et cetera. Is that how it works?
That's right. And I would say yes and no. So one of the things that we did is we train you 100% right. If you go to an LLM today and say, hey, here's an alert, investigate it, it's not going to do a very good job. It's going to do a bad job, as a matter of fact. Believe me, we've tried, because and the reason for that is because it hasn't been trained, right, to think like a incident responder, to think like a best-in-class SOC analyst. So what we've done is we've trained our product, Profit AI, to act like an expert analyst. So when an alert comes in, it will go and says, okay, I know what best practice looks like for this alert based on my knowledge, and that's going to be the starting point. And so when we do POVs today, Justin, you don't have to give us any run books or playbooks or any training, right? There's no training required. We're up and running in an environment in 60 minutes, and we'll start investigating alerts based on best practices in the industry. Now, to your point, you're 100% right. What's missing is organizational context, right? Because every organization is different. And that's where we have these adaptability capabilities, where if you have run books or playbooks, you can ingest them or upload them into our environment. And then we'll use that information to augment investigation plans with your organization-specific context. Or you can provide feedback in the middle of an investigation, right? Where we say, hey, look, we think something is inconclusive because we are not sure, because missing some organizational context, and analysts can go and add that context, and then we'll learn from that, and we'll use that context for that investigation and future investigations moving forward. And that's how we start to adapt the product to your organization. So you can do that at day one if you like, but most of our customers say, hey, look, you get us 80, 90% of the way there with what you provide out of the box. And then we'll add organizational context over time, as we start to implement it.
You used a key word for me a little bit earlier, agents versus LMs. I'm splitting hairs a little bit. What that leads me to is, you call these best practices, but really, is it, here's the best practice for malware, ransomware, very discrete type problems that we see, and how you handle them? Or is this monolithic LM agent, underneath the hoods?
Yeah, there are discrete agents, and there are agents that are involved in the planning of that process to develop the investigation plan. And there are agents that are focused on retrieving data from different data sources in your environment, right? Because you may have CrowdStrike or Defender or Cortex XDR or Sentinel-1. And so you have to then call the right agent to say, hey, CrowdStrike agent, go retrieve this information because I need to know the context on the status of the endpoint or whatever information you're looking for. And then there are agents that go and then reason with the data, the evidence that's been collected, and then decide, hey, are there additional questions that we need to ask based on the data that's been collected? And then there are agents that do summarization. And so it's a set of agents that participate in the overall process.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay, so just kind of stepping through to a different question. So we have an issue. Let me keep it simple. I've got a unremediated malware identified by CrowdStrike. It identifies it. Here's the plan of actual triage remediation. I assume there's configuration if auto magically remediate or human in the middle. And most people probably, on day zero are like, no, there's a human in the middle on this. I'm sure until they get comfort. Are you teaching it the tools and capabilities that are at its disposal for that remediation? Because, I mean, there's a whole suite of things that a SOC analyst would use and ancillary data sources that might be unique to their environment or is different. Maybe just a little color on that.
Yeah, absolutely. You're 100% right. You can configure how you want to think about remediation. Yeah. And we have customers across the spectrum. There are some that say, hey, look, if you're resetting a password because impossible travel alert or you're isolating a host, we are okay with doing auto remediation because that's, we are comfortable with that. Others will say, no, we want one-click remediation where we want our analyst to look at it before they press the button in our UI or via Slack or Microsoft Teams to say, go take remediation action. And there are others that say, hey, go open up a ticket in ServiceNow SecOps because that's our process. And then an analyst will pick it up and go and take appropriate action. So our philosophy, Justin, is to meet the customer where they are in their workflows, right? As opposed to dictating, what we think is the answer. And that's how we do it. And because we are doing the investigation, we have a sense of what needs to be remediated because we know what was the reason why something is a true positive, right? And so we say, okay, it's because the password was compromised. And so let's go reset the password, right? Or, hey, it's because they clicked on a phishing email and this process ran. And so let's go and make sure we delete that email. And then let's go look and see who else got that email. Did they click on the link? Did anything run on the endpoint? Oh, none of the others did anything. So it's just this endpoint that needs to be addressed and the others are fine, right? And so going through that entire investigative process is what an analyst would do today, right? And what we try to do is emulate that analyst and train the product to act like an analyst.
The another thing comes to mind, and I'm sure you've gotten this concern is, yes, but some of these situations in the worst of the worst of the worst scenario, we've got outside counsel, we've got the FBI, we've got, a whole bunch of organizations. That fidelity of what we did, why we did it, that documentation, if you will, becomes so immensely important. How do you respond to some of those questions where it's, I don't know how this LM is working, so therefore I don't know, how to document it?
It goes back to transparency and explainability. So what we will outline all the questions. When I say we, Prophet AI will show you all the questions that it asked as part of the investigation process, all the queries that it wrote to retrieve the data, and all the evidence that was gathered. And so if you want to go and talk to a GC and say, hey, look, here's what happened. Here's the reasons why. And look, here's the query. Here's the data. Here's the evidence. And the feedback that we get, honestly, Justin, is that this is so much better than what our team is doing today, because they may be asking 3 or 4 questions as part of the process, and then they're applying human judgment, and they say, okay, this is a false positive, and they don't have the time to go and document all the things, right? Meanwhile, Prophet AI will ask not just 3 or 4, but 20, 25, 30 questions, show you the answers to every single one of them, and then just show the reasoning as to why, and it's all done consistently. So we actually have customers that have chose Prophet AI in a POV, in a bake-off, because they say, I can go and share this with my audit teams, right? And doing an audit and say, look, here's what we're doing with these alerts. right? There's a healthcare organizations, financial services organizations where the bar is pretty high. They can't ignore alerts. They have to make sure they look at every single one and document as to why something is, good or bad.
You also hit another big point. I mean, when you have a problem, like a real problem, the relationship between the CISO or the head of the SOC or whatever kind of management layer that you want to use versus the actual analysts becomes stressed because, hey, the management layer is saying, I need to have timely information hourly so I can update the CEO, GC, and everybody else. That data flow becomes a bottleneck in a very significant way. And then is it accurate? What's the next steps? I would imagine that you could actually expedite the communication in that non-technical executive way of what is going on, how is it going, what do I need to do and think about in that marketing, sales, customer, legal, regulatory, brand, PR kind of sense in a much better way than maybe we've done it manually in the past, right?
Yes, absolutely. As a matter of fact, one of the things that we see heavily used is security teams saying, create a executive report for my non-technical CISO as to what happened. And LLMs are really, really good. And we didn't even touch about timeline, Justin. One of the things that Prophet AI does out of the box, it just builds a timeline of what happened for every single investigation. So imagine if something is a true positive, the first things that analysts are trying to do is say, hey, what happened when, what's the sequence? And they're cutting and pasting log entries into an Excel spreadsheet to develop the timeline of exactly what happened. Now imagine you have that out of the box.
Yeah.
I am convinced that this is the ROI that we are seeing from our customers. We had a customer that was using a MSP or a MDR solution. And they said, hey, look, we're going to run you side by side, for a couple of months just to see. And they had a incident and we escalated to them. We, meaning Prophet AI, escalated to the customer in 55 seconds. And it took the MDR 10 hours to escalate the same issue. And this, by the way, we have no visibility into the MDR, right? This is a customer giving us this feedback. And they said, this is the promise of, this is agentic AI at its best. And I am convinced that you have to go down this path. Otherwise, the alert volumes are going up, the breakout times are decreasing. And the only way you can keep up with it is by leveraging agentic AI. Otherwise, you are falling behind.
It does get into I agree with you. I completely agree, especially where we haven't really seen it en masse. I talked with another company in the email security space where the attackers are using their own curated LMs to really make exceptionally accurate and pinpointed email attacks, which not shock and awe, but it's starting to come around. And so that attack velocity is going up in a very smart way. The natural jerking back from analysts like, oh, what if it hallucinates? What if false positive rates? I mean, that's like the first thing I would ask. What's your response to that?
Yeah, and that's a question we get asked all the time. Yeah. And we say, look, if there are things we have built in the product to prevent hallucinations, right? And so the concern is valid. LLMs, by its very nature, are probabilistic. And you can't have a probabilistic solution in security, right? It has to be deterministic. And so again, goes back to our RAG architecture, right? Retrieval augmented generation and training Prophet AI, not the LLM, but Prophet AI on best practices on how to conduct investigations. And then it's a combination of that plus prompt engineering to make sure that you're providing strict boundaries or guidelines to the LLM. And then on the answer, when you get answer back, then leveraging LLM as a judge and making sure that the answer is rooted on facts, on evidence gathered. right? So there's a lot of engineering that's gone into ensuring that we minimize or eliminate hallucinations as much as possible. Right? If you rerun an investigation, you want to make sure you're going to ask the same questions and get to the same outcomes. You can't do different answers, for the same investigation, right? So that's the piece that is underappreciated. And we run into customers that say, "Hey, we're going to build this ourselves," and they come back 3 months later and 6 months later and say, we underestimated what it takes to really build that." Mm-hmm. And Justin, it goes back to the founding DNA of the company as well. The founding team is not just folks that have security or AI or big data experience, but security operations experience, right? So we wanted to make sure that we knew and we worked with 40 best-in-class incident responders on training our product on how to conduct those investigations, right? And so that's the secret sauce, and that's how we've gone through a lot of pain to make sure we can address those questions. And then when they see it in action in the POV, they say, "Okay, I get it. It makes sense."
So are you able to customize your own attack vectors? I'll just go back to Unity, for example. You've got your own bespoke services. You've got, payment processing, which is very different from a different type of company. How you analyze those customized service logs and events is always, something that on the back end, ops teams, SecOps teams, in a SIM really try to struggle and work for, but they never really get, in my experience, really the time and depth to really deeply understand the service to then apply. This is how password brute forcing is, just a very simple, basic example. Are you able to customize it or teach it in that way?
Yeah. So, for known security tools and for known attacks, yes, we've trained the product, like, password brute forcing. But when you get into specific alerts for your application, which is a custom application that you have written, only the company knows about, we have no idea, then we will do something. But what we need is more context, right? So if there's more context in the alert, as to what this is, what it's looking for, any mapping to, hey, this is part of, this MITRE attack, framework. Here's what we're trying to accomplish here. Then that's important context. And then we can do a lot with that. But if it's just an alert with no additional context, then we'll do a best effort, but it may not be what your team may do because we're missing that context, frankly. And so if you have a run book or a playbook that you can upload to say, hey, for these custom detections for our custom application, here's what we're looking for. Here's how we conduct that investigation. Then we can learn through that very quickly. So again, it's magic, right? It's not magic. You have to train the product on what that looks like.
Is it something as simple as creating my own run book and a document, PDF or some form, or is it different than that?
That's the beauty of LLMs. It could be a YAML, it could be a Word document, it could be PDF, it could be a Confluence page, it could be anything, and we can run with it. Yeah, that's what LLMs are really good at, right?
Yeah, you hit a different thing that in hindsight I think makes sense, but I didn't think about it before we got on the call, where that threat hunting. And so in a perfect world, hey, Justin, we're tracking all of the new attack kill chains, the new IOCs, all of that stuff, feeding it into near real-time updates into how we analyze your capability. You're in your environment. And then kind of identifying, whether it's a nation state or a campaign of an organized crimes, group or whatever it is. Is that part of this as well?
That's where we are headed. We're not there today. Today, what we allow you to do is conduct those threat hunts. So say you get a new CISA advisory and you get your CISO is asking the team, hey, are we impacted by this? So there's a new 0 day or a new IOC. And instead of having to write, queries in different tools to go look for that in your environment. If we have access to those tools, you can just write in plain English and say, hey, look, here's a new CISO advisory. Am I impacted? Or here are some IOCs, and am I impacted in your in my environment? And we'll go and do the work, right? So I think it's that threat hunting capabilities is designed for level 3 analysts and make them more efficient, more productive.
Or maybe even plugging into Styx Taxi or other capabilities in more of an automated fashion, right?
I mean, that's where, again, it's not to get into the roadmap, but that's where we are headed, Justin, but that's not where we are today. But this is, the possibilities are endless. And, and to me, that's the future. Yeah.
So you've been with Profit, you've been out of stealth for how long now?
It's been almost a year.
A year. So in that year, and then of course with design partners prior to coming out of stealth, you've gotten some pretty good handle on the reality of customer worlds, et cetera. Any points of wisdom or funny stories or shock and awe? I really did not expect that, and this is, what we saw, or anything along those lines?
Yeah, I'll share a story about, one of our early customers, and this is Cabinet Works, and the CISO has talked about this publicly, but it's worth mentioning that when they were doing an evaluation of our product, they had a junior analyst called level 1 early in their career in cybersecurity, and a senior analyst as part of the evaluation process. And at the end of the 2-week evaluation, the CISO asked the team, so what do you guys think? And, the response was, I'll be sad, I'll be miserable if you take Profit AI away from us. And, the CISO is like, you're killing me. I have no negotiation leverage now with that feedback. But what's amazing is that the level 1 analyst is now operating like a level 3 analyst. Right? Because we're leveraging Profit AI. And one of the things we did not anticipate, Justin, is the power of, a Profit AI in onboarding and training new team members, right? Because Profit AI is teaching them on how to conduct best-in-class investigations and how to write queries to retrieve data from different tools in the environment, because it's all there and they can learn from that very quickly. And so I thought it was a funny anecdote, when, and it speaks to the power of, agentic AI. And customers have gotten very smart about this, and they're realizing there's a lot of noise in the industry. So we had another customer, Fortune 500 company, was a paying customer, whose name I can't disclose. But as part of the evaluation process for the POV, they gave 2 vendors, us and somebody else, 10,000 alerts. And they say, here, go investigate them. And they compared the outcomes with their internal team's disposition of those alerts. And we were 98.5% consistent with their disposition. And the 1.5%, we were not wrong. There were no false negatives. We didn't have enough organizational context, so we flagged them as inconclusive, i.e. it requires a human review. This is where, again, human in the loop becomes extremely important, because sometimes you don't have high confidence on something is good or bad. And instead of making a bet or flipping a coin, Profit AI will say, hey, I need some more context. And it will escalate it to a human for review. And that, to me, is what we are seeing now. We are encouraging customers to say, hey, do a POV and compare results and pick the best vendor, right? The best product that meets your needs.
I mean, well, I want to hit the efficacy, and the speeds and feeds in a second. But you brought up a point of, that labor demand that we have across security, and honestly, we always will, but in the SOC specifically, that, level 1 to level 3, 4 kind of analyst. I mean, even spinning up a level 1 in an environment takes, 6 months to kind of spin them up. Having an accelerator for those level 1s, and then, enabling them, or the degradation of the workload that they have to do at all in that level 1, level 2. And so you're really having an acceleration of a possibly, and this is more of a question, of a junior individual going from level 1 to level 3 and 4 in a rapid time frame. Is that how you're thinking about it or seeing?
Absolutely. For us, it's role elevation, not role elimination, right? So what we want to do is we want to take the mundane tasks, right? The repetitive tasks away from the team so they can focus on higher order security tasks that truly matter and accelerate their careers forward, right? I mean, Justin, the reality is that nobody goes into cybersecurity wanting to be a level 1, level 2 analyst, right? I mean, think about it. I mean, do you really want to sit there and look at 3, 4, 5 alerts every hour, take a lunch break, take a break, come back, and you're back at it again, and 90% plus of those are false positives, right? And so it's not rewarding work. And so why not have an AI agent or an AI SOC analyst do that work for you, and then highlight, hey, here's some interesting things you should look at, right? And then they feel that they're really making a bigger impact, frankly, to the organization.
Well, I mean, I think this labor problem, just kind of taking a step back, I mean, you know it just as well as I, has been there forever. What we're talking about, AI, to me, is really that next, step in the continued journey of automation of anything that we're trying to do in security. I mean, nobody wants to be, and I was one, a, level 1 auditor, who wants to look at configs all day? I mean, some of us find a little joy in that, but, aside the point, same thing to your point.
Yeah.
How do you get individuals in security that want to make it a career and a discipline to be able to understand and grow into that more strategic kind of view of security direction with a corpus knowledge that they build up? But how do we accelerate that process? And yeah, I mean, burnout in the SOC is a thing. It's a big thing. You look at MSSPs and the whole, it is I don't want to be too dramatic about this, but it is a turnstile of labor because you get burned out.
Absolutely. And, when we were doing those interviews before we started the company, what surprised me the most is that morale and burnout and turnover kept coming up as concerns for SOC teams, right? And it's a real pain. It's a real problem in the industry. And we talk about 5 million open positions in cybersecurity. People ask me, "Hey, are we going to have fewer jobs in cybersecurity?" And I said, "Absolutely not." Right? I mean, when spreadsheets came about, we don't have fewer accountants or bookkeepers, right? I mean, they're just more efficient at doing things, and they're adding value in different ways and smarter ways than tracking your books on paper, right? So I do think that there's the future is bright, and I think we're just scratching the surface in terms of the value that we can deliver to security operations teams.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you in the trajectory. I do think that we will have lesser roles. I mean, look at a longer arc. Let's fast forward 10 years from now. We're in the first couple of innings of this AI process and security. We're learning the basics of it. What's exciting is that we can apply the contextual understanding in the process at the speed of input and output, that collection of an event to how we answer it in many different ways, not just SOC, but, list goes on. And we've needed to do that. And we've been kind of holding businesses back, engineering and others, as a result of the labor limitation to that point. If we can keep up with it, great, fantastic.
Yeah.
What I think we'll see over 10 years, less bodies doing security work, but more rewarding work in that process, where you're absolutely right. I mean, that it's a normal trajectory. You got to learn at, tier 1 and get to tier 4. But if you could accelerate that comprehension to those later, more rewarding work, then I think that's better for the industry as a whole.
Yep. Yep. And I think the first dent we can make is just shrinking down that 5 million open positions, right? Because now we are just, so that is not going to impact anyone directly. But yeah, 100% agree.
Or shrinking down the work that is not being done today, which there's volumes of security work that is just being cast to the side because you just don't have anybody doing it. If we could kind of get there, I mean, I think this is a multiple phase kind of approach over the next 10 to 20 years that we'll have to go through. But regardless of which, I'm not really good at predicting things. I said Google would never make any money. So, here's what it is. So let's talk about efficacy. You brought up a couple of data points of, hey, when you plug it in, this is what you're going to see: false positive rate, false negative rate, speeds and feeds. How long does it take to implement? When do I see things? What is the output that I should see?
Yeah. So, we've put a lot of time into making sure that time to value as fast as possible. So implementing Prophet AI in your environment is just a matter of configuring and giving us read-only access to data sources in your environment. So imagine read-only access to your SIEM or to any security tools you have. You can configure it online. It's self-serve. Customers are up and running in 60 minutes or less. And then as alerts start to fire, we start to pick up and we start to do the investigations, and you start to see the results of the investigation. So what you'll see is, there's a dashboard and there's an investigation view. Every alert that pops in, here's the summary of the alert. You can click to see the detailed, alert if you'd like. Here's the summary of the outcome. Here's why. Here are the questions we asked. And so you can drill down as much as you want to ensure that the investigation was done, how the investigation was done, essentially. Yeah. And that's as simple as that, right? And what we do is customers say, great, now I see value, and they can add more data sources as the like. If we get an alert and we don't have access to a particular data source to conduct the investigation, we'll flag that. So we'll say, hey, we can't do this because we don't have access to XYZ, and here's the easy way to add access to it. So we call those missed opportunities in the product, right? And so it's encouraging customers to add more data sources. And it's as simple as that. And then there are ways to, everything is in the product. So instructions on how to give access, what access we need for the different data sources is all in the product.
How quickly are you seeing customers go from just inform me or do that investigation and inform me to, okay, take action, remediate?
Yeah, today I would say that majority of our customers are saying, hey, for remediation, I want a human in the loop.
Yeah.
And then we have a couple of customers that are comfortable with doing auto remediation for identity or impossible travel type alerts for password resets.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, but for anything else, particularly for cloud alerts where you're dealing with production instances, they don't want us to take a remediation action. They want a human in the loop to do it. And what's interesting is that customers employ different workflows based on the environment. For some cases, we are paging them on PagerDuty. For some cases, we are sending it to a Slack channel that's meant to be escalations, right? And they get notified there, or Microsoft Teams, for example. And that's basically how, and again, we will work and meet customers where they are. But we have some customers, Justin, they'll start in what we call lane assist mode, where we do all the work, but they're looking at every single investigation. But instead of spending 10, 20 minutes on it, they're spending 1 to 2 minutes on it. And then they come back a month later and say, okay, I want to go into the autonomous mode, which is, full self-driving mode, where we will, if you have a high confidence it's a false positive, we'll close it out, the ticket itself, but you can always go and look at why, and there's complete auditability, right? So it's, again, giving customers the freedom of choice, because it depends on where they are on their security maturity cycle. their appetite for risk and where they are on their comfort level with AI.
It's I've been in a bunch of environments that you have to go from 0 to 60. It is, a real greenfield kind of environment. This would be, you would cut down 3 to 4, maybe 5 years of work building, the environment, the playbooks, the team, the other organizations to kind of execute a lot fast. Maybe on a different question, I have to ask, there are a lot of competitors in this space. You've got great backers, and the conversations I have, profit comes up consistently. And so how do you differentiate against those? I think the incumbents is pretty obvious, but the competitors in the early stage as well.
Yeah, it's in any exciting market where the TAM or the market size is big, the problem is big, and it's a high priority, high urgency problem to solve. You're going to have multiple vendors. Every venture firms want to have a play in that market. So totally understand that and respect that. Competition is great. I love competition. It pushes everybody forward. Yeah. What we find, what we've learned from our customers is that, they insist on doing a POV, a proof of value or proof of concept with 2 or 3 vendors. And we recommend that. We said, please take the product for a spin. It should not be a heavy lift for your organization. You should be able to configure it quickly or with our assistance and be up and running in your environment so you can see the results firsthand. And then, what customers tell us is that there are 3 dimensions that are most important to them, and that's what they use as success criteria. The first one is around the depth of the investigation. What questions are you asking? And when I look at those questions, does that make sense to me? Would my expert analyst say, yes, this is how I would conduct an investigation, right? Because that matters, because it gives you comfort level that the product knows what it's doing. Number 2 would be accuracy of the investigations. Right. And so, the example that I talked to you about earlier with the Fortune 500 company, we were 98.5% accurate or consistent with the outcomes. The other competitor, which is a leading provider in the space, was at high 70s. Right. And so customers like, this is a no brainer. And, they're a paying customer and referenceable in a private one-to-one setting. And then the third dimension is adaptability. How, to your point, a question you asked earlier, organizations are different, and how quickly and how easily do you adapt to our policies, and our context, and how easily can I give you runbooks, playbooks, or give feedback in the middle of an investigation, and you take that, you learn from it, right? And sometimes customers are doing pen testing, and they say, hey, look, we're going to do a pen test for the next month, and if you see something from this domain, it's okay. And being able to just enter that in the product, and it accounts for that and gives you, when you see the investigation of that, it gives the reasoning as to why this was a false positive, right? And that's the end-to-end loop that they are looking for. And it's no longer sticky notes, and it's no longer having to route that to an engineering team to write an if-then-else statement, to write an exception, a suppression rules, or things like that, right? It's all in the product. You can see all the rules that have been applied. So those are the kind of things, those 3 dimensions is what customers look for. And then there's transparency, there is UI, there are other factors as well. And so our whole mantra is, look at references, go to Gartner Peer Insights and type in vendors and see which vendors have strong references, see the demos, narrow down to 2 or 3 vendors, do a POV, and may the best product win.
I've always known you to be thoughtful and insightful, and that's probably I couldn't make a better answer to a competitive question than that. That's awesome. What is the one thing, you would like a listener? I'm stammering, but what is that? Is there a one point you would love to really get the listener to kind of really understand and know, if there is one thing?
Yeah, I would say that agentic AI in the SOC is delivering real, measurable, quantifiable ROI. So whether it's Profit AI or somebody else, doesn't matter. But I think for teams in security, and particular teams in security operations, take a look and you'll be amazed as to what it can do. And, we are 3 years into, the launch of ChatGPT, right? I would say that in the first year, to a point you mentioned earlier, security teams have been promised AI and ML and, UEBA and everything that's going to solve the problem, and has not been a panacea. Year two, we started seeing a lot of demand. And now, Justin, we are seeing demand from companies that historically have been late adopters of technology, but because of the industries that they have been, or because of compliance requirements or what have you. And they're beginning to realize that we can't scale and fight this with just humans. We have to fight AI with AI. And by the way, agentic AI in the SOC is just one of many ways you can leverage AI in security, right? So it's most talked about, but there are other use cases like leveraging AI for automate pen testing, for example, as another great use case that we hear from our customers that are exploring it. Yeah.
Yeah. What have we not talked about that maybe we should? Any points that you want to bring up?
I just feel that there's been a lot of talk about the promise of AI and is AI in a bubble, and I'm not good at predicting anything, Justin, but I will say that when applied properly, right, AI can deliver measurable results, and we weren't sure what it was going to be like when we started on this journey, 2.5 years ago. But I sit back and say, wow, right? I mean, these AI agents are truly powerful, and the impact is undeniable.
I agree. I kind of talk about it in, we talked about SaaS and multi-cloud providers very early on, and there was a lot of poo-pooing and a whole bunch of other stuff. And of course, there were like 3D and curved TVs that never really made it as well, so not all heyday statements come true. This one is very different. If we can get a 95% or higher efficacy of what we expect, then, because I think humans are like 92% or less, kind of efficacy consistent in what we do. But if we can get 95% or higher, then that is, 80, 90% of the 1.3 million security professionals in North America really pattern matching in a lot of ways. And so you're able to kind of do that, never miss anything, because I'm sure that you fired this up in one of your customers and they said, well, we only had 20 issues last week and now we have 2,000 this week, is because you're picking up on all those things that they just never got to be able to do, and to kind of raise and escalate them. And you're doing it, I mean, you said 98% or whatever, efficacy was amazing. You're doing it consistently, more reliably, and at a much shorter time frame velocity to execute, which is critical. That's really exciting. That's not going away. That is already past the human. And the technology is just starting to kind of really get its legs underneath it, so to speak, in my point.
No, and consistently across all our customers, we are removing 92% or so of alerts that are false positives that they don't have to look at, right? Because we have high confidence they're false positives. And again, by the way, they can go audit them all day long. Everything is documented. So it's not like a human judgment being applied. So just think about the impact of, okay, my security team now, instead of having to deal with all of that, is now dealing with a small segment of the alerts that are true positives or malicious or need human review, human judgment. And that itself is a game changer. And not to mention, and we didn't touch on this, but we consistently see customers that are suppressing alerts and want to add more alerts, but they can't because they don't have the back-end capacity and security operations to deal with them. or companies that have ignored alerts and that led to breaches or incidents in their environment, right? And you no longer have to do those things. You can write more detections. You can go and look at every single alert. You can correlate, a low from your endpoint, a low from identity, and a low from your network, which may be ignored. Now is correlated and say, hey, this is a problem that you need to look at. And we see those examples every day in our customers' environment.
Well, you brought up false positives, but the other big category has always been the deduplication. I mean, when we were running our systems, we would, I think it was always for every issue we triggered off of, we would generally have 7 duplicate events from other systems. That was a huge labor reduction of just addressing that issue. Is that fair?
And we do that out of the box, right? So deduplication happens out of the box. Tying in alerts from different tools into an incident happens out of all those things that you're talking about that people usually write automation rules or SOAR playbooks or do it manually is now done for you, like timeline views. So it's it's an exciting time, and I think it's an exciting time I'm just excited that for the first time we're able to shift the balance of power, right? Previously attackers always had an upper hand because they could just flood the system, they could just add more alerts. Now with AI, we can finally shift the power of balance to the good guys.
Any other points you want to make as we kind of wrapped up? We hit a whole bunch of things.
This is great, Justin. Thank you. It was great conversation. You are a great host, so really appreciate the time and the opportunity.
Well, always kind words, but you're always a gentleman, so I definitely appreciate it. Kamal, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I'm excited about this space, no doubt about it, but I'm definitely excited about watching you and the team as you progress, not just for your customers, but for the industry as a whole. So awesome.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Justin. Really enjoyed it.